Before firing a shot in anger, before learning battlefield tactics or how to throw a proper salute, the infantryman is expected to know how to do one thing: march. The Second World War sees soldiers marching through dusty steppes, across snow-covered fields, and over sandy dunes. They stand in mud-filled trenches and wade through waist-high water. To do all this, and a lot more, they need proper boots. But what makes a good combat boot? Let's find out. I'm Indy Nidell. This is a World War II special episode about the combat boot. Even going back to the sandals of the Assyrians, it has been known that a good pair of robust and comfortable footwear is one of the most important pieces of equipment a soldier can own. Good footwear is essential to keeping his feet safe from chafing and blistering and free from moisture, dirt, and rocks. At the beginning of the Second World War, there are basically two kinds of established military boots: the laced ankle boot supported by puttees made out of cloth or canvas, and the unlaced and much higher jack boot. To decide between the two, the great powers must look forwards towards the future. Do they expect to fight in Northern Europe, where they have dry summers but rainy and muddy winters? Then the tough and simple jack boot might be ideal. Or do they have to police a colonial empire where they must march over rough terrain in a hot and humid climate? In this case, the more flexible laced ankle boot might be the better choice. If you think of the Wehrmacht's footwear, you most likely imagine heavy jack boots goose-stepping down the street in unison. This practice, though, has less to do with Nazi fetishism and more with the Germans following their traditional military dress code. While many other nations move towards the more universal ankle boot, the Germans keep with the old Hessian-style boots of the 19th century. The model 1939 marching boot comes up to mid-calf, where the trousers are tucked into the seamed shaft. The stitched and pegged main sole is made out of hide leather, and the stacked heel is metal reinforced. Although this boot is made with brown leather, the soldier must apply a black finish with boot black to keep them in style with the uniform. The main advantages of the jack boot are simplicity and durability. A good fitting pair of marching boots can last a whole campaign if well maintained. Since they have no laces, it takes only seconds to get in and out of the boot. No holes also means mostly proof against damp and wet weather, useful in wartime when marching 20 plus kilometers a day is not unusual. To prevent wear and tear on the soles, they put hobnails into the pegged sole, and these bear the brunt of the impact. These nails are also much easier to replace than the expensive leather. Although the Wehrmacht does experiment with low boots, especially for its mountain troops and the soldiers fighting in North Africa, and also provides paratroopers with jumping boots, they will keep with the traditional jack boot for the rest of the war. The bulk of the Soviet army in 1943 is supplied with the Kirza jack boot. See, since leather is in short supply, especially during the mobilization times in 1941 and 1942, these boots are not made out of real leather, but the artificial leather Kirza, which mimics pig leather. The Red Army prefers the jack boots for mostly the same reasons as the Germans, as it performs well in the northern terrain and most of the climates they are fighting in. The more spacious Soviet Kirza boot, though, generally performs better in the cold and snow, well, especially from 1941 onwards when improvements are made to the manufacturing process, but also as it allows for thicker cloth inside to be wrapped around the foot. Soviet soldiers do not wear socks. Instead, they are provided with foot wraps, the portyanki. These are just rectangular sheets of cloth, cotton in the summer and flannel in the winter. It is the traditional way of filling out the boot depending on the temperature. Some units, if they are expected to fight in heavy snow and temperatures way below freezing, are issued thick felt boots, the valinki. These can even be protected by additional rubber galoshes. Soviet quartermasters do also outfit some troops with low boots combined with puttees, but most of these come through Lend-Lease with the Western Allies. As for the British, traditionally, Great Britain has chosen to rely on more universal general service ankle boots. Since the 1880s, they have been issuing so-called ammunition boots as the main footwear for British and Commonwealth soldiers. Although the name suggests additional combat value, it most likely just refers to the munitions board of the Royal Artillery, which oversaw their production contracts. Ammo boots are made out of contrasting leather, switching between a smooth and rough outside at the front and sides. Both the heel and the toe caps are reinforced by steel plates, and the sole studded with hobnails. Although the British have made small changes in different production patterns throughout the decades, the general design of the ankle boot remains unchanged. During the Second World War, some modifications are made according to the experiences on the ground. For example, British commandos are issued boots with rubber heels and soles for stealthy operations. The boots of drivers, tankers, and other specialists have their steel plates and the hobnails removed to avoid damaging machinery or flammable equipment. The influence of British military footwear can be seen far to the east in the Japanese army. In friendlier times, the Japanese military allowed itself to be very influenced by the equipment of the British Commonwealth. So most of their troops wear similar ankle boots made out of tanned leather, usually combined with woolen puttees. But there is also the traditional split-toe footwear, known as the jikatabi. These leather and hide shoes are reinforced for the outdoors with rubber soles. They are often issued to veteran troops, such as the Special Landing Parties, that operate in the deep jungles of the Pacific Islands. The economic strains of the war have forced pretty much all nations to keep with their established footwear designs throughout the war. One nation, however, that has both the industrial capacity for change and the desire to find the perfect combat boot is the United States. In the past, American quartermasters followed the British example of the marching shoe. During the Great War, they issued the 1917 trench boot. Made out of tanned cowhide, it had a half middle sole that was covered by a full sole and reinforced with iron plates on the heel. The troops, however, described the boots as very uncomfortable, and the rigid soles took a long while to break in. They also weren't waterproof, which, in trench warfare conditions, was a pretty bad thing. Many of those problems were addressed with the 1918 Pershing boot, yet the search for the perfect combat boots was still not complete. Not much changed with the standard U.S. military service shoe until the Second World War. But by 1942, the Quartermaster's Department of the U.S. Army began looking for a more universal combat dress, less individualized and specialized garments, and more practical standardization. They soon enough came up with the new M1943 Field Ensemble. It includes a 4-pocket field jacket, trousers, a cap, and the M1943 Combat Service boots. At first glance, they look just like modified service shoes, but with an extended leather fold-over cuff at the top. Yet, the new calf-high boot is in fact an overall improvement. The leather is reversed with the rough side out so that it absorbs waterproofing oils and wears much better than polished leather. The single sole made out of synthesized rubber might be pretty uncomfortable at first, but is less rigid to allow soldiers more mobility. The higher cuff at the top also replaces the separate canvas leggings attached to the previous service shoe. The cuff is closed by 2 buckles, leading to the nickname, the double buckle. Overall, the new Universal Combat Boot is appreciated by the troops as a step in the right direction, with the buckle system being more convenient and more practical under frontline conditions. Soldiers fighting in the humid conditions of the Pacific Islands, however, still need special jungle boots made with rubber and nylon that retain both the integrity of the boot in tropical conditions and keep the feet dry and free of spreading bacteria. Nonetheless, although it will take time until the M1943 boots are distributed in large numbers, they will become the standard of U.S. combat troops. The Second World War demonstrates how important a reliable combat boot truly is, though nearly all nations do keep using their pre-war footwear, usually out of necessity, since introducing new boots during wartime it's a logistical nightmare. It is not easy to say if the ankle boot or the jack boot has the advantage over the other, as both are designed to be used over a certain kind of terrain and climate. Only the US, though, has the industrial power to introduce a new design during the war, which will become a widespread standard after the war. Rubber soles, lightweight, ankle support, and high laces seem like prime ingredients for the perfect combat boot. Actually, if you want to see a whole special about the American war machine and its industrial mobilization, you can click right here for that. And you can join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com so we can make ever more of these and of that fantastic specials. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.